The US president has said that US forces deployed near Iran would remain stationed in the area until a real agreement is reached. And this is just over 24 hours after the ceasefire was announced. And this is a day after Washington entered that fragile 2-week ceasefire with Tehran. We're currently on day 2, and this is where things stand. Fractures have emerged, and they're only growing deeper. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said, I quote Trump here, all US ships, all US aircraft, military personnel with additional ammunition, weapons will remain in place in and around Iran until such time as the real agreement is reached and it is fully complied with. Trump said that the failure to reach or comply with the deal means shooting will start again, this time bigger, better and stronger. Though he feels it's highly unlikely that will happen, he still seems hopeful that a deal will be reached. But why was it not reached when the ceasefire was announced? Was there a hurry? We'll delve into that a little later on the broadcast, right here on Newspoint. As of now, both Iran and US have given divergent versions of what had been agreed to before that ceasefire was announced, that double ceasefire. Iran has reportedly halted the passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz again. Iran has also cast doubts on the future of the talks scheduled to take place in Islamabad just later this week. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says that the workable basis of negotiations has already been violated, making further talks unreasonable, quote unquote. Ghalibaf listed 3 alleged violations of the proposal: the continued attacks in Lebanon, a drone entering Iranian airspace, and a denial of the country's right to enrichment. Notably, Ghalibaf is expected to be a member of the Iranian delegation for the talks. Israel has been carrying out its heaviest strikes on Lebanon since the Iran-backed Hezbollah joined the war in early March. On the day the ceasefire was announced between the US and Iran, that was the day Lebanon saw its worst spate of attacks coming in from the Israeli side. Death toll 250. Israeli military said that it has struck multiple targets, including a wave of strikes hitting over 100 targets. And Israel claims they were targeted in less than or just in 10 minutes. Strikes across capital Beirut without warning triggered scenes of horror and panic among civilians. Reports say more than 250 people killed, nearly 900 wounded on Wednesday alone. This is a single-day figure. UN rights chief Volker Turk called the scale of the killing horrific. Iran has vowed to hit back owing to the hostilities in Lebanon. Its Revolutionary Guards warned that they would fulfill their duty and deliver a response if Israel did not cease its strikes in Lebanon. But Israel said that it is prepared to confront Iran if that is necessary.
We have more goals to complete, and we will achieve them either by an agreement or by renewing the fighting. We are prepared to return to fighting at any moment necessary. Our finger is on the trigger.
Israel has said that its battle against Hezbollah is not part of the truce, an argument echoed by US Vice President J.D. Vance, which days before he is due to lead talks with Tehran in Pakistan, where he is scheduled to meet Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who has already cited enough violations of the ceasefire.
Look, if Iran wants to let this negotiation fall apart in a conflict where they were getting hammered over Lebanon, which has nothing to do with them and which the United States never once said was part of the ceasefire, that's ultimately their choice. We think that would be dumb, but that's their choice.
But Vance also replied to Ghalibaf's statement that Iran has a right to continue uranium enrichment.
The second thing Ghalibaf said, which again I found fascinating, is he said, we refuse to give up the right to enrichment. And I thought to myself, you know what? My wife has the right to skydive, but she doesn't jump out of an airplane because she and I have an agreement that she's not going to do that because I don't want my wife jumping out of an airplane. We don't really concern ourselves with what they claim they have the right to do. We concern ourselves with what they actually do. And I think the president's been very clear on the enrichment question.
Well, Iran has announced alternative routes for ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. citing the risk of sea mines in the main zone of the vital waterway. Under the truce, Iran has agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz temporarily, with ships passing through the strategic waterway on Wednesday. But reports suggested the waterway was shut again later in the day despite the ceasefire, prompting the White House to call on Iran to reopen the strait immediately, quickly and safely. Adding to the fragility of the truce is White House's insistence that the Iranian plan being discussed in the media is not the working framework received by US officials.
Iranians originally put forward a 10-point plan that was fundamentally unserious, unacceptable, and completely discarded. It was literally thrown in the garbage by President Trump and his negotiating team. Many outlets in this room have falsely reported on that plan as being acceptable to the United States, and that is false.
And this shows that many issues remain unresolved, starting with the basis of the negotiations. The mediators, Pakistan, and they are due to host the American and Iranian negotiators for talks in Islamabad just later this week. All right, lots to unpack as we try to make sense of what is really going on in terms of the ceasefire. Is it even in effect? I'm being now joined by Dr. Avner Cohen, joining me from Montreal, California. He's a professor of non-proliferation and terrorism studies, Middlesbury Institute. Dr. Cohen, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for making time. Let's quickly start, Dr. Cohen. There are too many fractures that are emerging. There are violations of the ceasefire. There is the Lebanon aspect to it. Then there is enrichment. And then there is the Strait of Hormuz. These were also essentially core issues in the beginning, leaving Lebanon out. But let's start with Lebanon to begin with, because yesterday was perhaps the worst day for Lebanon in terms of the death toll throughout these last 6 weeks at least. Pakistani Prime Minister had put out a post. He mentioned that the ceasefire is effective immediately. That was soon after that first post of his, where he mentioned that the ceasefire has been agreed to by both sides. Then Donald Trump tweeted saying it's a double ceasefire. Then Pakistani Prime Minister puts out this post. He says Lebanon and others is going to be part of the ceasefire effective immediately. US now says that Lebanon was never part of the deal. Is there an Israeli imprint to this decision from the US, which was initially in the plans? How do you read it?
I read it that there was a lack of disagreement, and despite the issue that there was a lack of agreement and they let it go, the decision was made. It was a way that it was easy for both Pakistan and Iran to claim that they believe or they understood as if Lebanon was included. Israel said it wasn't included. The president and the vice president backed Israel, so the issue remained unresolved. I think that Israel gave a hint that some aspect of its operations, first there was a big blow, after that there was less. And I think that the Iranians will swallow that. That's my impression. I don't think they're going to violate the entire ceasefire because of this issue. We'll see the extent in the coming days, today and tomorrow, how much Israel would continue to push on Lebanon, or just simply to keep some kind of the forces where they are without that much movement. So we'll see.
Dr. Cohen, now let's come to the other points which have only proven to be bigger fractures in that very fragile ceasefire. There is the continuation of Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump, in his latest post just a little over an hour ago, he said that the strait must be opened. How was a wrinkle of this volume not ironed out when they rushed? Was there a rush to reach the ceasefire, and now the statements are coming out when there some kind of at least a statement-wise pause has been achieved, at least on paper?
No question that you're right. I think there was a rush to reach ceasefire. Both sides, the United States and Iran, ultimately, despite all the rhetorics, wanted the ceasefire. President Trump, the so-called TACO syndrome, Trump always chicken out. He did not want to destroy civilization, despite his big threats the day before. Iran wanted also to have it. They reached some kind of ceasefire with very little agreement made. essentially very rough agreement about the Strait of Hormuz, which is not even clear, both sides, and essentially that's it, with the notion that would be 14 days of negotiation in Pakistan. So both sides, I think they rushed to reach. A lot is far away in terms of the position of both sides. Both sides are very far from having any agreement about essentially everything.
So on that note, Dr. Cohen, do you really feel there is going to be, are there even going to be negotiations in Islamabad when J.D. Vance from the American side and Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf from the Iranian side, they've already traded barbs online. Vance says it is dumb to think that they would jeopardize the ceasefire for the sake of Lebanon. And Ghalibaf, in his statement, it was a lengthy one, he mentions number of points saying Lebanon is a sticking point and it's a violation of the ceasefire. He mentions a drone entered Iranian airspace, and then he also says denial of Iran's right to enrichment. These are the three mentions that he gives for the jeopardy, which is for the violations of the ceasefire, and then J.D. Vance is already fighting on his end. How would you expect these two to sit across the table or even indirectly in Islamabad and achieve anything?
I don't think that any side would dare not to show up in Islamabad. I think ultimately a great deal is at stake, and despite all the reservations and all the notwithstanding and all that, I think they will show up and they will start talking initially indirectly and possibly later on directly. To bridge between the position, it will be very, very difficult. But I think they will meet in Islamabad this weekend.
And let me come to the next point, Dr. Cohen, nuclear enrichment. Again, Donald Trump has mentioned just an hour ago his last statement where he mentions nuclear enrichment is not possible. And this is essentially what led to the entire war. And now a ceasefire is announced and we're right back to where it was, whether you want to see it 6 weeks back or from last year or the year before that or to 2018 or to 2015 or to whenever it was decided that Iran will be allowed to enrich uranium to 3.67%. What has even been achieved through all these hostilities and wars?
That's the big irony, that in terms of the nuclear program of Iran, we're coming back essentially to the same point that they were in Geneva just before the hostilities. Yes, a great deal of the Iranians' missile program, even the nuclear program has been damaged further. A great deal of national infrastructure was damaged. So Iran is much weakened than before. But nevertheless, in terms of the position on the questions of the nuclear issue, they are very close right now to where they were in just before the hostilities.
Dr. Cohen, there is, and as I'd mentioned in my introduction to the show as well, it's an evolving situation and a devolving ceasefire. We'll just have to wait and watch how this one goes. Less time to go before they arrive in Pakistan. As you mentioned, that no side will dare to not show up, and that's a perspective that you add. I'd take it to our viewers as well. We'll have to just wait and watch how this one goes, because everyone seems to be as clueless as the parties who are negotiating the ceasefire, and one can only have a good guess at this point of where this is heading. That was Dr. Cohen joining me from Montreal, California. Always a pleasure, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.